Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you. You get fairy dust. I get fairy dust. I changed chairs, so Amelie's not behind me anymore. She's over there in the comfy chair. I cannot figure out how to get my office right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we're going to talk about Codependent No More. We are on the chapter called Removing the Victim. Same. When she says victim, she's referring to Karpman's drama triangle. And if you remember from the previous video, that is a triangle that consists of a rescuer, a persecutor, and a victim. So the victim means an adult that is not it's an adult that's not actually in need of they're capable of solving the problem, but they choose not to. And so, so we're going to talk a little bit about this. This is so important. It's so important to hear these qualities, to help us get familiar. So as we're continuing to heal inside of our relationships, people always ask me, like, what are the red flags? Well, these are the red flags. And it's important to remember. So she's going to describe rescuing, and more importantly, she's going to talk about the feelings that come up for us when we're in the presence of a person, an adult who is not solving their own problems, who feign helplessness or whatever. We're not talking actually a real emergency or, a real thing that we need to love and support each other for. We're talking about something like, somebody just saying, it's just hard for me. I can't leave the house. I need for you to, will you go get the stuff from the store, for me, or will you go buy these clothes for me? Thank you so much. And then like 5 minutes later, they're, headed to the bar or something. Like they could leave the house. They just didn't want to do the chore. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about someone who's actually has clinical depression or somebody who, like, I'm talking about somebody who it's like, hold up, wait a minute. Like, what do you mean? Like you said you couldn't do that because you couldn't leave, but you left to go somewhere else. So what's up with that? And what's up with that is they, quote unquote, played the victim or whatever. They feigned helplessness. I think I like that phrase better than playing the victim, because it's a real button pusher. Because a lot of times people that are emotionally abusive toward fawns, enablers, the rescuer, accuse us of playing the victim and shame us for playing the victim. And sometimes they may be right. And so for me, it's a button pusher because I have been called that before. And maybe sometimes I was, but the majority of the time it was used to be mean. So it's like, you're playing the victim. Okay. That is persecution. That isn't like healthy, like, hey, what's up with us? How's our relationship doing? I love you. I'm worried about you. It's shamey. Shame. That's persecution. So, but I do like the phrase feigning helplessness better because that feels more understandable. Okay. So she's like, what's a rescue? Page 84. And she's listing. So a rescue is when we do something that we don't want to do. We say yes when we mean no. We are doing something for someone, although that person is capable of doing it and probably would be the healthy choice for them to actually do that themselves. Like getting ready for work tomorrow morning. Like, we don't need to lay out other adults' clothes. Like, they should probably be doing that. That's a healthy thing for people to do if they like to set out their clothes the night before. Meeting people's needs without being asked before we agreed to do so. So the thing about some of us, a lot of us, probably if you're here, I mean you, because you spot it, you got it. So the thing is, we actually do know what they want half the time. A lot of times, no, but like half the time at least, like we're so fucking intuitive and we're so used to these cues and we're used to the tension and we're used to all of that Sometimes we kind of do know. So part of it is like we actually have to hold back because, and also it's kind of like sometimes it seems easier for us to do it. Like I know I kept my son in Velcro shoes longer than he should have been in because it was really hard to teach him how to sew. I mean, sew to tie his shoes. So I would keep, we try and then it didn't work out. But it's better for a kid to tie their own shoes. That's a developmental skill that they learn. It's something that they can be proud of. And so that's what I mean. It's healthy for people to do things for themselves. It makes people feel good. That's how we get self-esteem, by doing shit for ourselves. So if I'm always doing shit for you, you're not going to get any self-esteem. We're just going to be miserable because I don't want to be doing that. I know you should be doing it. So, but anyway, but we are kind of good at figuring out what other people want. And so part of it is, it's like we have to, allow people some room to figure out what they want. Because if they're with us and we were full on fawns, full on codependents, full on rescuers, it takes them a minute to figure out what they want, or it takes them a minute to, realize that we're actually not going to step in. And so we have to endure sometimes a little bit of space. We have to take a pause. And it's not hard it's not as hard when you're really conscious and doing your work. Like it's not as hard. So that's why we have to pay attention, and why we have tools, and why some of us need to be in 12-step programs or other support groups that support us and help us so we can do this work of being conscious in our relationships. I'm talking about Al-Anon, and I'm also talking about adult children of alcoholic groups. There's also Codependents Anonymous as well. Okay. Doing more than our fair share of work after our help is requested. Same. Consistently giving more than we receive in a particular situation. That's just like another Tuesday. Fixing people's feelings. We do not like it when people are suffering or uncomfortable or having a hard time. We fix. Doing other people's thinking for them. I'm writing a book on trust right now. It's the Irreverent Trust Guide. And one of the things that I talk about is like, if somebody says like, I want to quit smoking, then so it's like, let's say the other person in the room, I want to quit smoking. And what the fawn does, what the codependent does, the rescuer does, is they hop on Google and like look at the patches and look at maybe specific programs, buy a couple of books. Okay, well, no one asked for that in the first place. And the chances of that person, after getting all this fucking overwhelming information from us, like, I'll help you stop this, even though the addiction lives in the other person's brain, we think that we're going to fix this for them. And so, but if a person actually does want to quit smoking, part of how they do it is doing their own research and following their thread to figure out what is the next right thing for them to help them accomplish this goal. But if we jump in and totally take over, I mean, that's just not going to, that's not going to help. It's actually not helpful. It's not helpful at all. So that's what I was thinking of when she says, do other people's thinking for them. Like, I want to do this, or I want to do this. I'm thinking about becoming a therapist. And so then the other person does all the research for the graduate schools. Like, that's just not going to go well. Because part of the process of becoming a counselor, becoming a therapist, is doing your own research. So you gather all the information that you need to. Suffering people's consequences for them. This is one of the things I call eating other people's consequences. I think that's why a lot of codependents have weight issues, me included, food and weight issues, because we spend a lot of time eating consequences and then we're sitting with all their consequences and we need something to kind of tap all that shit down. So but yeah, stealing, I also call it stealing other people's consequences, which is a mean thing to do, because then they don't learn because they're not having any consequences. And then we get mad at them for us stealing their consequences. So it's just not healthy. Putting more interest and activity into joint effort than the other person does. Kind of, we've already said that. Yeah. Like, oh, you just said like, I wonder if this or that. And then the other person's like runs to Google, gets on their phone, like, la, 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 does research, calls contacts from the other person. Um, and not asking for what we need, want, need, or desire. And so all of these things, at least 80% of them, if not 90% of them, for me, fall under the category of self-abandonment because we don't work as hard on this with ourselves. We're not taking care of ourselves. And so if you're interested in learning more about CPTSD and self-abandonment, there'll be a link in the description to the classes. So I'm teaching another class this month, and but you'll have immediate access to all the past classes. So the last one we talked about self-abandonment, which for me is a linchpin of CPTSD. And it's my hunch if you have codependency, you also have CPTSD. Because where'd you learn this shit? Like somewhere in childhood, right? Okay, so let's talk about, okay, so it's just really important, really important, really important. Just a reminder, because we get our little buttons pushed when we hear all these things. We are not talking about acts of love, acts of kindness, acts of compassion, and true helping in situations where our assistance is legitimately warranted and needed, and we want to give that assistance. That is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about that. We're actually talking about these things are dysfunctional and they hurt the people we love. We impede their progress. We're I talk about stealing consequences. Well, guess what you're stealing? Well, guess what you're causing by stealing these consequences? You're interrupting, disrupting somebody self-actualizing, because all of this stuff that they've got to work on, just like us, is what they need to self-actualize. We cannot self-actualize for another human being. That is not a thing. Okay, so now I want to just take a moment to talk about the discomfort that we feel when we don't just rescue, right? So at the time, so this is all quoting Melody Beatty. At the time we rescue or caretake, we may feel one or more of the following feelings. This is on page 85. Discomfort and awkwardness about the other person's dilemma. I made so many mistakes. Like after I was a therapist, I did this before I was a therapist because I'm kind of been a therapist since I was a baby, but just full on empath. But when I got my license, let's say, and then I was more educated, is I thought when my friends would say they were having a hard time, it meant that I was supposed to inform them of the shit that I know, that I was being a bad person if I withheld this tool or this idea or whatever. And to me, it did not feel like I was giving therapy to my friends. But I actually lost friends because of that, as well I should have, because they did not need a therapist. They did not need somebody parenting them and giving them the tools, just like all this shit I just said. Like they didn't need that. They needed a friend. And I was rescuing. And so losing friends was part of my consequences, and I'm still learning. Like this is a work in progress, bitch. But I am so tempted to save the day. I'm so tempted to give the idea, or I'm so it's so tempting again. And my rationale is that if you want to know, where to buy a flashlight and you're really wondering, I know where, I just bought one. Let me tell you about it. I love this flashlight, whatever. And they were just trying to tell me that they wanted a flashlight. They didn't ask for me to fucking jump in and fix their life or, give them they can look at reviews on Amazon. They can just Google best flashlight and get the flashlight that's a fit for them. And maybe their flashlight, maybe the one that I have isn't actually the best one for them, but I didn't, So I'm just saying, just reminding you that I have this shit too. I have it. And sometimes I still have it. Sometimes I'm always going to have it, but sometimes I'm still it's an effort not to like in the I know the answer. I know the answer. Like like fucking Hermione. Like I got this. I got, and that's not what people want or need. Now, fortunately, I have a job where people pay me to do this, and that is where it's, prudent and helpful, and what's supposed to happen again, but I don't fix. I just am good at being a therapist. But I just want you to know, like, we're not bad. This isn't like we're bad people for doing this. These are wounds. It's an expression. It's just, like I said, I think codependency is a trauma response. It is the fawn response. So what does that mean? We have trauma. And, in child, the reason that we do that is that was what it was expected of us. And so, we weren't safe unless we were doing that. And now it's just outlived its usefulness and we're just trying different things. So okay, so the awkwardness of the other person's dilemma, urgency to do something. Yes, I got it. I got this. I know this. Pity, which is not great. I find pity to be persecution. I find that could be condescending, and like we don't need to pity other adults for having a problem. Like we all have problems. Poor them. Like, no, that's not what that's needed here. Guilt for not doing it, guilt for not rescuing. Saintliness. I didn't really have that. But some people do. Some people, well, maybe I did a little bit when I said, like, I feel like it was my calling. Like I was supposed to do this. And it's like, well, what made you think that? It's like, I guess it's the saintliness. Like, here I come down from heaven to give you this information. And again, this is just dysfunctional, not helpful. Anxiety. We're anxious when we don't fix it because we're used to fixing it. A sense of being forced or compelled. Absolutely. Mild or severe reluctance to do anything. I don't know what that means. More competency than the person we are helping. That's a little bit of the saintliness. Like, I'm better than you. Let me reach down and help you. You poor thing. We kind of like victimize them. Like they're just another adult having an issue, but we put them, as the rescuer. Let's say they're actually being helped. And you're like, I'm thinking about going to graduate school, or I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about ordering a flashlight. They're just trying to connect with us. And then we force them by rescuing them. We're forcing them into helpless mode. We're forcing them into, now sometimes they are baiting us, so I don't want to just say like, we're just doing it for no reason, but let's say they weren't. And by us like pitying them or whatever, it's just, it's not a good look. Yeah. And we think that the other person is helpless and unable to do what we are doing for them. And also we feel fucking needed. Like I said, like in those roles as like friend, I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing. I thought that was the right thing to do. I thought that was how to be a friend. So I hope that, and so what we have to do is we have to tolerate some discomfort. And we do it, we fall on the sword. We do that. We bravely experience the discomfort in service of healing our trauma and honoring the other person that we're in the relationship with. Again, everything else is kind of infantilizing, pushing them down to victim mode, and that doesn't feel good. It's happened to us before. We don't like it. It's like mansplaining is 100% like putting me in a victim mode. Like, I don't need to be explained this. Like, and that feels gross and icky in a relationship. And that's what we do. Again, we don't feel that way. We don't think it's that way. We feel compelled to do it because we thought we were supposed to. And we did have to do it when we were kids, teenagers, first marriages, whatever, several boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. But that ship has sailed, and we're saying au revoir to rescuing. And what we're going to do is allow other adults to self-actualize and love people where they are instead of rescuing them. So I hope that's helpful. Love you.